university as well, and I teach pre-service education students. I teach digital communications and educational digital technology. So they're all going to be teachers, and I teach them the tech.
That's so cool. Hey, Brett, I just noticed that for some reason we weren't live, but we are now. So we've just lost the start of all of that, and I apologize for those who are just joining us live or watching the recording of that. We did miss the intro for some reason. This is what happens when Jerry isn't with me, but these things happen. But thanks, Brett. We're going to introduce our other presenter for today, Stephen Colbert. So, Stephen, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Very, very well. And you?
Very well, thank you, Stephen. Stephen's an Adobe campus leader and an English and humanities teacher at Brunswick Secondary College in Victoria. Stephen's also a speaker, writer, and researcher, and he runs an academic teacher group via #EduReading. More information about Stephen can be found via www.stephencolbert.com. How's that for an introduction for you?
It's amazing, beautiful. Some of it's even true, so that's even better.
Oh, good. Stephen, just notice the flags behind you, and notice you've got a Cambodian flag behind you. Tell us about what that is all about.
So my wife and I, my wife's the president, I'm the secretary, which is the way it should be, I think, in marriage, of Teachers Across Borders Australia. So we develop teachers in Cambodia. So we take the things that I'm personally good at, which is, technology, video, and all that sort of stuff, as well as just normal face-to-face teaching. And we fly over to Cambodia twice a year. Obviously, we've stopped momentarily due to the current situation, but twice a year we go over. We run sort of 10, 15, 20, 30 Australian, New Zealand, US teachers. We take them over and basically put on a teacher development conference for a week of about 20 to 30 contact hours around sort of subject area expertise. So that's what we do. We're always looking for volunteers and, fundraising obviously as well. But at the moment, we're looking at how to transition that onto an online mode. So that's our current challenge, but that's broadly what we do.
That's amazing. How did you get started? What was your first engagement with Cambodia?
First engagement, I went there probably when I was maybe 19 or so, and then I took my wife there on our honeymoon just to see how she'd go with, the real world, Southeast Asia, and she passed the test, and so we're now married, obviously. And then she found a little advertisement for this group, and so we went and taught. We co-taught, which was really interesting, by a translator, interpreter. And that was another test for our marriage, I guess, trying to teach a group of 30 Cambodian adults and teach them things in very different styles. So that's how we started. And we've been going ever since for about 5 years now, about twice a year.
That is just awesome. And I can really appreciate what you do. I used to be involved in running a group of people to go to Israel every Christmas. And this was to a hospital in Nazareth that needed expatriate support because it was mainly a Palestinian hospital. So I know what it's like to get a group of people together to go overseas to actually work on a particular project. It's a lot of work, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm sure the local Cambodians do as well. Amazing. So Brett and Stephen will be presenting for us on Blue Jeans at 7 o'clock in about 20 minutes time. Brett, can you tell us about what you will be sharing during that time?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to be actually going through some of the workflows in and around Premiere Elements because it's one of those tools that I think a lot of us, especially in the Adobe kind of ecosystem, a lot of us use Premiere Pro, and a lot of us are often looking for a nice simple workflow with a tool that's actually more powerful than you may consider. And what I'll be working through some of the workflows that we use with some of our student filmmaker type projects that can be done autonomously with students.
And so that was Premiere Elements as opposed to Photoshop Elements, is that right?
Absolutely.
And Brett, with Premiere Elements, it's widely accessible in New South Wales schools, particularly in the primary schools. you'll find there's a number of primary schools that do have the Elements products around. So that's going to be really useful for them. But it's not actually part of the Creative Cloud, is it?
No, it's something that's I know public schools in New South Wales have access to, and it's a tool that they can that has actually been purchased by department, and it's something that is installed separately. But I don't know, it's a tool that is often overlooked, but I think it's the term Elements actually, in a way that people think it's a very simple tool, but it's actually a very fully fledged, very comprehensive tool in and of itself.
And Stephen, can you tell us about what you'll be presenting today?
Yeah, so I'll just be talking about an activity I did. I'm a secondary school teacher by trade, so I'll be talking about basically, I had my students do what's called a pecha, which is a Japanese presentation, 20 pictures, 20 seconds. And we used a range of tech tools, but Adobe Spark being the one that I sort of took them through. And the reason I did that is because they're EAL learners, so they too much sort of text-heavy programs wouldn't really work for them, whereas Adobe Spark is relatively drag and drop and lots of symbols rather than text. So I'll just be taking you through what they did, what tools I took them through to do that, and just some examples of what they came up with.
That's going to be great. Looking forward to that, Stephen. This will be the first time that you've engaged with a number of the Adobe education community. And so it's been great to get to know you a little bit better and see what you're doing at your school and what you're doing, obviously, in Cambodia too. And Brett, just coming back to you now, tell us about the world of education. How did you get involved as an educator? Why is that so important to you?
It was just I've told this story a few times. I was a commercial photographer by trade. I worked in studio, and one day I said to one of the other photographers in the studio, I said, "Oh, I'm going to actually go back to uni," and they assumed I was going to go back and do a graphic design course or something like that. And I said, "No, I'm going to go be a primary school teacher," and they all looked at me sideways and thought I was kidding. And I ended up doing a degree in English text and writing, and I thought I was going to be an English teacher. And when I arrived in school, everyone took a look at me and they said, "You're a technology teacher." And I said, "No, I'm not." And they said, "Yes, you are." And it was the skills that I developed around Photoshop and Illustrator and web design through that previous career that I thought were fairly rudimentary skills. But when they threw me in a computer lab environment, I thought, well, how did I learn even the skills that I had? And it was through using Photoshop and those tools. So I started teaching them to kids, and one thing led to another, and here we are, down the track.
That's great.
So yeah, a lot of those industry skills that I learned that I thought were quite simple, they were the sort of the grounding for how I learned the way computer technology works.
Yeah, it's a good story to share. And I just noticed here that Erin from TAFE Queensland has brought in a comment. And let me encourage those of you who are watching this live at the moment through either Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, if you want to throw in some questions or comments for our presenters, that'd be wonderful. This one's an interesting one here. Erin says, "I got started years ago with Adobe when Photoshop and Premiere Elements were included in my new laptop. It was a great entry-level product for me back in the day." So there you go, Brett. And Erin's gone on to do amazing things now with TAFE Queensland. She's part of our leadership community, and she's a very valuable part of it. And we'll look forward to her joining us at 7 o'clock in about 16 minutes time when we jump over to Blue Jeans. Thanks for sharing that, Erin. Stephen, tell us about your education career. How did you get started as a teacher, and what drives you as an educator?
I don't know. I think when I started, I just enjoyed learning. And so that's sort of my driving force, learning more things about the world and about my topic areas, English, history, and EAL. How did I get started? I don't know. I came out of university and we started with a course of, 300 people. And by the end, there was about 10 of us. We knew each other back to front. And so I sort of realized that, maybe we were the people that maybe would stick in teaching for the long haul sort of thing. And so, yeah, I've been at the same school for 10 years and increasingly used video and technology in my pedagogy, my approach. And sort of the last couple of years have been sort of taking that to the conference circuit as it was, and sort of training up the staff at my school, either explicitly or kind of implicitly guiding them through the sort of skills that, like Brett was saying, that I feel are relatively rudimentary, like, you know, what we're doing now, sitting in front of a screen talking to one another. And then obviously remote learning really jump-started that for a lot of people. And so we're hoping as a school and as me personally and as a broader education community that we can kind of get people on side to using digital technology a lot better and a lot more frequently than they did beforehand.
Stephen, I love this quote. I'm just going to share my screen for the moment, and hopefully you will see a quote here from Education HQ News. This is an article called "Don't Rush Teachers Back to the Old Normal. They've Propped Up the Flawed System for Years," by Stephen Colbert. So Stephen, this is a wonderful quote, and I've actually used this quote in my last newsletter to actually head up the May edition of my newsletter. Remote learning is causing a dramatic improvement in the familiarity of most teachers to the range of digital pedagogies that exist. For the majority of teachers, this is a titanic shift in what is possible. The metaphor of a teaching toolbox is being extended with new power tools being added to teachers' repertoires. I love that quote. Stephen, can you tell us a bit more about what prompted you to write this article and what responses you've had since?
Yeah, I don't know. So I guess going to remote learning, because I've always taught via video and via technology. When remote learning came around, it was sort of like, okay, well, I've got a YouTube channel and there's content waiting for the students. So compared to my colleagues, there was more time to reflect, to think, and to sort of consider. And so I sort of did a lot of writing and thinking and publishing. And so that was one of the articles that I wrote. Appeared in The Age a couple of times, which surprised me. They even published something I wrote. But yeah, just kind of, I don't know if I agree with the title that they put on it, kind of, broken regime or whatever they called it. But, you know, it's like, yeah, that's kind of what we're driving at. Yeah, I don't know. So I just trying to put myself into other people's shoes and see, you know, they're starting to do things that I've been doing for years and being like, oh, this is good. And at my school, at least, everyone's talking like, oh, flipped learning, that's an interesting idea, and kind of really getting energized by the things that have energized me for the last 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping that some increased flexibility comes out of this as we sort of lean into technology a bit more and be more able to reach the students that are harder to reach, those most disadvantaged and with learning difficulties and all those sort of things, that we could actually reach them a little bit better with technology. But maybe that's naive. I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
I wouldn't mind you thinking about this question. I'll pose it to Brett first. In terms of the changes that you've seen happen during COVID-19, can you see any major shifts that are likely to stick for teachers that they've kind of been forced into? And then, Brett, I'll get you to respond to that after. Stephen, I'll get you to respond to that after Brett.
I don't think we've got enough time for this one. This is, I could talk, wow, this is massive. Like, I have had the opportunity to work and the privilege to work with hundreds and hundreds of teachers over the last couple of years and in a mentoring and technology role. And some of the teachers that I have spoken to previously have now, after being, I suppose there's nothing like a crisis to force change, and some of the good that's come out of it, teachers working on their workflow, teachers working on their methods of delivery, being able to actually share content in a quick and efficient manner. And some of the teachers that I spoke to before that were, no, I've got it, this is okay, situation normal, have now realized that after being kind of forced into that situation, they're starting to rethink the way they actually deliver content, the way they access their classroom and deliver feedback to students. So that's probably been the biggest shift that I've seen.
And before we go to you, Stephen, just notice that Juliet Bentley has thrown in this comment. I'm worried that old practices will slip back. Some reluctant teachers have really felt engaged, but many have struggled. And that's, that I can see that, and Brett's nodding there too. Stephen, what's your responses to that discussion?
I don't know. I'll probably talk about it in my deep dive, Tim. No, but it's like basically we did a lot more instructional video, and we did a lot more video conferencing at my school, at least. I can't speak for any other setting than my own, really. But so we're really pushing that instructional video is the one thing that we keep. So our push and our suggestion was that during remote learning, rather than do what we're doing now, have a discussion via video that's usually very one way, that you would instead jump off the call, record some video, and then in a year's time, when you're teaching that exact same content or that exact same topic, you've got that video there. So to me, if that's the practice that teachers have put in place, which at my school that's quite true, then I think it'll be hard to avoid that change. Whereas if it's just, we taught everything via Teams or Google Meets or whatever it is, that's ephemeral, that's gone. You can't go back to it. You did that live, you do that synchronously. But if you have something asynchronously saved, recorded, filmed, ready to go back to, then as I said, next time you come back around to that cycle, you've got that thing sitting there, which means you then can explore different ideas in the time that you're freed up by the video you've already made. So
that's good.
That's my hope, and that's why we focus on that, where I'm at. Sorry.
Well, I don't want to steal your thunder for what you're going to be presenting after 7 o'clock, but just one other comment here from someone who's not been identified on Facebook. When you do log into Facebook, you get to choose whether you can be anonymous or not. But it's an interesting comment anyway. This was in agreement with Brett, saying forced adoption hasn't been that bad for those on the fence, which I think is interesting because there's been a lot on the fence. And another comment here from someone else on Facebook. That's what's happening at TAFE South Australia. We won't be going back to the old normal delivery of graphic design and print production. What the new way is, we don't know yet. And it is a big changing landscape. And yeah, it's exciting times really for a lot of people, and probably daunting for others too. Juliet's saying we are creeping back into meetings. We use Teams extensively. Some recordings will take place. I record and upload to my website, which allows me to add a tweak. Yeah, no, that's so true. And hopefully we don't creep back to the old ways, but it is possible. Brett and Stephen, thank you so much for joining us for this chat. We're going to spend a few minutes just doing some housekeeping, a few announcements to make, and then just before 7 o'clock, we're all going to jump into my Blue Jeans room. Let me just bring up the Blue Jeans address again in case anyone needs it. It is bluejeans.com/kitchen.adobe, and that'll get you into our deeper dive show starting in about 7.5 minutes. But on behalf of everyone who's watching live at the moment, thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to what you have to present a little bit later on. So we'll say goodbye to Stephen, say goodbye to Brett, and I've got a few little housekeeping things to share with you. So let's just jump into them now. And hopefully you will see some announcements. This one's interesting. I've actually got a brand new edu tip that's sitting now on our Vimeo channel, Create EDU TV, and it's all about Premiere Rush. And I know I've been talking about this for a while, but I finally finished it, and last Friday it was uploaded, and I think we've already had over 400 hits to it, which is lovely. So hopefully it's going to be worthwhile. But on the EduChip series, there are tutorials there on Photoshop, tutorials on Character Animator, tutorials on Spark, and I've been wanting to do one on Rush for a while, and I filmed it a little while ago and finally got round to editing and getting it published. So that's available to you now on EduTips to share to your colleagues and your wider networks. Also, to share to your colleagues and wider networks, let me just get this into full screen so you can see it properly, is the Adobe Creative Educators program. And after 7 o'clock, I will be touching on this a little bit more because this launches next month, and we've already got about 3,000 teachers on the wait list, just waiting for this to happen. And if you're already a campus leader like Stephen is, you automatically become an Adobe Creative Educator. I had a call this morning with our AELs and with Clara, in San Francisco, and she told us a little bit more about this program. It's going to be exciting. Those people who aren't ACLs, you will be encouraged to do a course, one of the Education Exchange courses, a general course on creativity in education, and then you become an Adobe Creative Educator. In August this year, we're going to open up to a level 2 of this program, which will be exciting. At our summit this year, we're having a special day for our Adobe Creative Educators and our Adobe Education Leaders, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Here's the summit, bit.ly/adobe-edu-summit20, and I'll put that into the chat pod after 7 o'clock if you want to grab the link then from the chat pod. Otherwise, take a screen grab of what you can see now. On Tuesday, the 29th of September, that's a day just for Adobe Education Leaders. And just to remind the leaders that the month of June is the renewal month. You've got this month now to renew for the next 12 months of becoming an Adobe Education Leader. On the Wednesday, the 30th of September, that's a day open to all teachers. And we're just welcoming any educator at all around the country. It's all online, so you don't have to be in Sydney for this event. So we encourage you to be part of that on that particular day. On Thursday, the 1st of October, will be a special Creative Educators Challenge Day, and that's going to be exciting. This will only be for Adobe Creative Educators who are part of that program and Adobe Education Leaders. You can find out more through that link. I would like to congratulate Juliet Bentley, who we've just been hearing from in the chat. So thank you, Juliet, for contributing in the chat. But I'd like to congratulate her on being our spotlighted AEL. And we'll open up the microphone to her after 7 o'clock when we get a chance so she can respond to that. But it's pretty exciting to have her representing our region of the world, our APAC region of the world, in this international group as a spotlighted AEL. So congratulations to Juliet Bentley. We do have this Facebook group that a number of you are already part of. We've opened this up now to all educators. So if you want to be getting regular contact with the Adobe and Education team in Australasia, there's the link, facebook.com/groups/AUSAEL. All right, we've had the chat shows. So a very big thank you to Brett and to Stephen. We're about to jump into the deeper dive show. And I'm just having a look at the clock. We've got 4 minutes till the top of the hour. So we will just stop sharing this. And then in about 4 minutes time, we're going to be jumping into Blue Jeans. Let me just bring everyone back up again. Stephen, if you want to just get your camera working back there again. There's the link, folks, for it. Brett and Stephen. And I'm already up there. And Luke, if you want to just open up as well so we can say goodbye to you. And there we go. Luke didn't have a lot to do for that session. We had him come in at the last minute. And I'm just having a look at the comments to see. We've got lots of congratulations and lots of thanks from people from all over the country. And congratulations to Juliet, which is great. And we're looking forward to connecting with her again soon. And a comment here from Lily. Yeah, that's a nice one to finish. I'll just bring that up here so we can see Lily's comment. Teachers don't want to go back. Cherry picking is the best, is a great mindset for the world's greatest educational experiment. Interesting comment there, Lily. And we look forward to hearing from you and other people at the top of the hour as we move to the Blue Jeans room. bluejeans.com/kitchen.adobe for our deeper dive chat. Thanks again, guys, for being part of this chat show. And we're going to end the broadcast now, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes in Blue Jeans. See you later.